Growing up, I was tormented by a lot of evil spirits. I only really saw the demonic side of the spiritual realm, and a lot of that kind of kicked off because of family related issues, so that didn't help the situation. So ending of 5th grade, beginning of 6th grade, I started going to this very small, you could say private Christian school, but it also was a church because we attended on Sunday morning, but also were there Monday through Friday for school. We were going there for a while, and the first year was great, didn't really have a lot of issues. I loved hanging out with everyone. It was a very small, super small, I think there was 30 kids for almost the entire school. And this is kind of where everything really kicked off. I had major sleep paralysis almost if not every night. My parents' relationship was super rocky. They were in a rough place of do we get a divorce or do we work this out? And it was never sugar-coated for me, which has its perks because I knew something was wrong and I didn't like being lied to about it. And so it was very difficult to just have to deal with home drama. And in the second year, 6th grade, I was getting severely bullied, mainly by a bunch of mean girls. And so when teachers would walk out of the room to we only had 3 or 4 teachers of the entire school. And so if they had to have a conversation about something, they would just up and leave the room. Or if they had to take a phone call or whatever. So it was a very frequent thing. They would probably leave the room 4 or 5 times in our hour session of class. And so kids would talk. As soon as a parent walks out of the room, they're gonna talk. There was at one point, there was this guy and this girl, and they were you need to go kill yourself, and all these things. And somehow they got my phone number, and so they would just put, go KYS yourself, and I would receive those from 3 or 4 different people. I just kind of thought was a ha joke, because if I said anything about it and how it hurt me, it'd be oh, you're being overly dramatic. And they're joking, take a joke. And so, when you're 11, you want to fit in, you want to start making friends. And so I was just you know what, I'll do what I need to fit in. So, they tried to get me to say that to somebody else, and I was no, I don't want to say that to somebody else. That's not nice. That was happening on top of the bullying, on top of, I started going to the pastor's wife about, my dreams that I was having and stuff like that. And she was well, that's very cultish. And I was I don't know what a cult is. And so I was just okay, I couldn't really seek help with anything, and it just escalated really bad to where I'd be sleeping on one side of my bed and I would just get shoved to the other side of the bed, and I'd turn around and there'd be nothing there. And I was just oh, okay. So I wasn't sleeping at night either. And so I would go to school super exhausted. I had a best friend that was also going to school, and we were both bullied. We both were going through some stuff, and so we would confide in each other about life sucks, this sucks. The bullying just got so much worse. I was walking up the stairs, and these group of kids came up with me, sprayed Lysol on my eyes, and I went to go tell a teacher, and I was the one that got in trouble for it. I just never fit into the popular crowd. I was not that person that wanted to. That happened for a whole year. And then after I started skateboarding and forcing myself to fall off the skateboard because I would get road rash or road burn. And I figured out that is more painful than when you're cutting yourself because it lasts longer. And if you just are walking, you feel it. And this is extremely demonic now that I look back on this, but I could take my frustration off of what was happening physically and just put it on what I was feeling on myself in that moment. And I really started to hate myself. I was if all of this is happening, then I must be doing something wrong. I must be the problem. There was someone in my life that kept telling me that too, you need to fix yourself, you just need to do it. And I'm I don't know how to change. And they're no, but LaRue, you need to change. You need to change. And I would hear this for this was happening from I was 10 to maybe 15. This specific person was just no, you need to change. And I never even knew what that meant. And I was just okay, sure. I kind of took that in as I was going crazy, and man, I really must, nobody here wants me here. So why am I still here? And why am I even here in the first place? There was a whole year where I didn't really have any friends, and I didn't really have anyone to go to. And that's really where the Lord met me, was stop going to other people to try to fix you and to like go seek comfort. And yes, there is like an importance of having friends and healthy like people, but I really got to learn at 13 the importance of building a relationship with the Lord. And so I really like started just like diving into like the Psalms of like, you know, you are complaining for 1 second and then the next you're rejoicing in absolute suffering. And so that's kind of just how I was. And I was still, I think I had just back in 2017, I had 2 failed attempts at committing suicide, and the beginning of 2018, I was about to do another one. And each time I went to go to try to commit suicide, I would hear the audible voice of the Lord, like literally as soon as, he didn't even say much, he just like would say my name, and it like snapped me back into reality. Because when I was in that mindset of like, okay, I'm just gonna die, it was almost like I was in a dream. I knew I was here, but I wasn't here. Like my mind wasn't here. And I wanted to die in the most gruesome, in my opinion, most painful death, to be like, take all the consequences that I felt like I deserved on when I would die. And then I got really frustrated with the Lord the second time he did it. And I was like, why won't you just leave me alone? I would just go, and I was still reading my Bible, and I would still pray, and I would still have conversations with him, because like I never was really like taught like, you know, how to pray before going to bed. I would just have conversations with the Lord. And because I kept seeking the Lord in all of that, the more I would hear his voice. And so a lot of it was just like, you need to really work on forgiveness for that church, because I was like, we weren't going to that church anymore. I harbored a lot of bitterness towards all those kids, towards family, towards that church. And the Lord was like, you can't move forward unless you forgive them. At this point, starting to exit out of middle school, enter high school, I was in 8th grade. We had just started coming here at Rock City, and I didn't go to youth group here for a while. I was like, you know, I'm just gonna sit in service and call it a day. I think my first experience at youth, Pastor Don was talking about dreams and like having demonic dreams and having good dreams, and I'm like, what is this chick doing talking about these things with a bunch of like 11 to 13-year-olds? Like, that's not normal to me. You don't talk about that in church. Like, I was told it was very cultish, and you know, like, what the heck. And so I remember pulling her aside after service and being like, I have so many questions. Like, what does all of this mean? And then I made a lot of friendships, and this is kind of like where things really like, I had to come down to some real decisions. And all my friends, all of them, were like coming out as bi and gay, and they were a bunch of females. And so I was like, and these were people like I used to spend the night with. And so it was, for me, like, it was really hard to be like, we used to be able to talk about God, and now all you want to do is talk about dating the same gender as you. And we would all have very disagreements, you know, but they also weren't reading the Bible. So I'd be like giving them all the scripture references of like, don't think that that's biblical, and I don't think that's okay. And like, not out of like shame, because like I didn't hate them. I still loved them. I still wanted to be their friend. But it also hurt me to see them being like, you have done a 180 in your life of like wanting to pursue the Lord. Because like there was this one specific friend, and it is sad because we're not friends anymore. Just because, you know, who you feel your circle does influence you. And I got to a point where I couldn't influence her anymore, and it was harming me. So I eventually had to cut the ties. But this was kind of the beginning of it. I've noticed a lot with my friends, the world educated them before their parents could, because their parents thought the conversation could wait, and it didn't. And so their first experience on a specific topic was what the world taught them, and so that's what they know. I do think it's very important for parents to have healthy conversations with your kids and be able to explain the whys. Like, don't just say no and write it off, because society will go into detail about why something is okay. The enemy, from the very beginning, told Eve why it was okay for her to eat the fruit. I am 20. I will say, like, now, like, obviously, like, I got to see the redemption of the Lord, like, especially being in a healthy church that, like, wants to see you grow, that keeps you accountable, that does, like, do check-ins, like, how can we pray for you, instead of, like, I just want to know the gossip of your life. And so, like, I got to see that happen with my parents. And was it a process? Yes. Was it messy? Yes. And I got to see a lot of the prayers I had at 12 and 13 come to pass. It took a while, but hey, here we are. And I wouldn't change it. Don't play yourself as a victim or be like, all these things happen to me and boo-hoo, like, you know, don't go into the victim mentality, but take charge of it of like, no, I'm not my life's victim, but this is my story and I'm a better person because I got to come out of the fire being refined and being a different person. And I get to now help other people do that. I now mentor girls that, you know, don't like, are dealing with bullying, that are dealing with, you know, comparison. I think with girls, like, you can get in the mindset of like, why don't I look like her? Why don't I have those things? Like, you can really get, like, girls can get catty in that. And so being able to be like, don't fall into the lie and don't compare yourself to somebody else. I think my generation needs Jesus, obviously. Like, I will say what I do like about my generation is when we're determined about something, we'll go after it. And I think that that's super important. The only issue is what is your destination that you're so determined on getting to? And I think another thing is we are so easy to try to figure everything out when the Lord's like, I just want you to keep your eyes on me and just come walk with me. Like, come just do life with me. And we get so like, oh, we need to figure this out. And I need to figure out what college I'm going to and what I'm doing with my life. And the Lord's like, why don't you just sit in my presence? And, you know, I think we're also like very scared to get bored and be in the quiet. We're very like, what's the next thing? And the Lord's like, can you just sit in the quiet and hear my voice? Knowing that I have a community and a church that if I go off in life and I bomb it and like I make a mistake, I have people in my corner to help pray with me, to keep me accountable. And I think that that's super important in this generation of just like knowing that if I need to like learn something or like even do it the hard way, here's how to do it. Here's the process on how to go from A to B instead of being like, go figure it out on your own. Because I feel like when we're like over here like trying to figure it out on our own is when we really tend to mess up on something. And it's not a bad thing to ask for advice. I think, you know, we kind of, you know, live in a society of like figure it out on your own, but like it's okay to be wrong. And I think it's like, be teachable. Don't act like a know-it-all. Don't act like you have everything figured out. I think the biggest advice I've ever been had, like, stay teachable. You know, whatever you take away from this testimony, just like know like the Lord loves you and your past isn't too dirty. Your shame isn't too big for the Lord to be able to use you and for it to chip off of you. Whatever it is, like childhood trauma is a thing. Give it to the Lord. Don't harbor in it and don't let it pass to future generations that are coming after you. Like, be intentional with dealing with it with the Lord.